Concrete secrets. Crystal gleams under the chandelier's cold glow. Charles checks his watch again, patience thinning. Margaret's breath shallows as she aligns the fork. An empty place setting pulls every gaze. Steam rises from the roast in ritual silence. Sarah sits rigid, avoiding David's eyes. David studies the glass, jaw twitching. Michael pours wine, unease measuring the glug. An empty chair waits like a verdict. Silverware whispers in the heavy quiet. Charles's complaint lands like weight, 20. Sarah's barb slices, eyes on her glass. Michael probes, curiosity neatly masked. David cuts it off with a hard throat clear. Margaret smooths a wrinkle that isn't there. The doorbell rings through panelled hush. Charles opens to a damp, apologetic Vincent. Traffic was murder, the word hangs. Charles steps aside, suspicion intact. Vincent crosses the threshold, eyes lowered. Dinner begins with ritual precision. A toast to family and new partnerships. Sarah lifts her glass. Michael drinks deep. David barely wets his lips. A mild tone, a warning in the chain's glint. David drops a manila envelope on the table. Accusations spill. Soil, fraud, a costly cleanup. Margaret's knife slips and clatters. Charles turns to Vincent for an answer. Vincent flushes, hands open in defense. Voices rise like breaking glass. Vincent fires back, jaw set. Sarah tries to speak, then falters. Michael's tone hardens toward the truth. Charles pounds the table for control. David lunges across the table. Michael reaches to restrain him. Vincent hits the carved table edge. He collapses to the carpet. Red wine blooms across the cloth. Silence crashes over the room. He is dead. David stands frozen, chest heaving. The clock tolls 9. Margaret hums in the kitchen, unaware. Vincent lies still on the carpet. "We have to move him," David whispers. "Call the police," Michael insists. "No. Think," Charles orders. The room holds its breath. David insists it was an accident. Michael counters, "Murder." Charles rewrites the story. Sarah pleads for calm. Margaret enters with desserts. Porcelain explodes on the floor. Margaret whispers prayers. Charles leans on Michael. Michael stares at Vincent's hand. Sarah begs Michael, mascara streaked. David watches like a condemned man. A siren grows in the distance. We are all already guilty. David dials a dangerous favor. Sarah asks about the car. Michael outlines the plan. Charles cracks the door to wet dark. David slips out to make the call. Michael scans for neighbors. Sarah guides Margaret away. Cold air fogs Michael's breath. He wipes the wheel clean. A parking stub disappears. The engine booms, then dies. He cracks the garage door, planning. Headlights slice the rain at the back gate. He speaks low to the unseen driver. A tarp unfurls, dark and heavy. They lift the weight together in silence. Whispers about the route cut through rain. The gate shuts, sealing the secret. Rain needles the half-built slab. They drag the tarp toward the void. A nod, then the final slide. Wet cement swallows the plastic. No words, only the rain. Wipers beat time through the downpour. He idles at a shadowed curb. Keys clatter into the drain. Handles wiped, no traces left. He slips away into the wet dark. Pounding at the door shatters dawn. He whispers calm, hands trembling. The house feels suddenly vast. The knocking resumes with authority. The door opens to wet uniforms. A badge flashes, eyes sweep inside. He names the missing man. Surprise is performed with grace. Water drips onto the marble. Morrison studies David, pen tapping softly. David lies that Vincent left alive. Morrison's pen sets a slow rhythm. Charles weaves the story with poise. Beneath polish, a ghost of bleach lingers. Sarah blurts a rushed alibi on the stairs. Morrison files the detail with a tilt. Michael enters with coffee, rain on his coat. Eyes lock, a cup slips and shatters. Coffee blooms across the marble below Sarah. Morrison greets Michael by name, unblinking. The warrant appears, crisp and final. Officers fan out, methodical and quiet. Margaret perches, white-knuckled on the rail. Order unspools under official hands. Evidence glints under a bleak light. A missing knife, a wiped expanse. Morrison threads the timeline aloud. Sarah breathes shallow at the frame. Charles offers velvet cooperation. Morrison states it, Vincent is dead. Margaret folds in on herself. Sarah sinks with a small animal sound. David turns as the color drains. Only Charles's eyes move, calculating. Morrison details the concrete grave at Camden Street. David tenses, hands twitching as officers shift. Morrison warns him not to make it harder. David breaks, sobbing it was an accident. The room tightens around his confession. Handcuffs click around David's wrists. Sarah reaches, Michael holds her back. Margaret whispers a shaking prayer. David pleads with his father to fix it. Charles stares at the broken coffee cup. Rain streaks the courthouse windows beyond the bench. David sits hollow-eyed beside Blackwood. Webb rises, crisp, calling Morrison to testify. The jury leans forward as tension mounts. The first domino tips in silence. Morrison testifies, body in concrete, blunt trauma. Each phrase lands like a hammer. Blackwood's cross falters under the weight. Michael grips his knees, sweating. The evidence points to the Whitmores. Recess spills the crowd into a long corridor. Charles stands apart, staring at the rain. A new anonymous text flashes on Michael's phone. Footsteps echo somewhere out of sight.